Ravens officially arrive at training camp. No practice today, but everybody was in the building. We also heard directly from Mark Andrews, Ronnie Stanley, Nnamdi Madubuike, and I want to go over which players and position battles I'm most excited for and am watching closely throughout training camp. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. So the Ravens officially arrived in the building today. Training camp has officially started. Not training camp practice, though. I think there's still some confusion out there. I've been trying to say it in the last week or so of videos that the first day they're just reporting and there's meetings and they probably worked out and stuff like that, but they're not actually practicing until tomorrow. So tomorrow is the first training camp practice. We'll actually get to see them out there on the field. We'll get some news and updates from practice, so we'll have a lot to talk about from here on out. But today they just arrived in the building. We did get to hear from Ronnie Stanley, Mark Andrews, and Nnamdi Madubuike, who spoke to the media. We'll start with Madubuike. He said that he's trying to put on another 5 to 8 pounds and play between 290 and 300 to help out with some of the double teams that he saw last year. He saw a lot more double teams than he's ever seen before. His production obviously declined a little bit, but that's because he's getting so much attention.
Definitely got a lot of potential last year. It freed up a bunch of guys, but it was frustrating at times, but I made an emphasis this offseason to find ways to split them, get stronger in the weight room, stuff like that, get even add a little bit more weight because I know they're going to be sliding, so it's a good thing, and I appreciate it, but I definitely want to keep being productive and being the player that I know I can be.
What do you want your kind of target playing weight to be?
Same time?
What do you want your target playing weight to be?
Probably it's between 290 to 300, around that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How different is that from last year? How much weight did you want to add?
Last year I think I was a little bit lighter, maybe 285 around that 290. But I want to add a little bit, 5 to 8. I think those little things even add a difference.
Madubuike also talked about being more of a vocal leader and stepping into that role, especially with Brent Urban and Michael Pierce not on the roster. Two vocal vets that have historically been leaders in that locker room. Madubuike stepped up quite a bit last year, honestly, after that contract. He was rotating with Roquan Smith on who breaks down the huddle and things like that. So I think we'll see more and more of Madubuike really become a vocal leader on this team and one of the leaders of the entire organization. Moving on to Mark Andrews, he said he is excited for week 1, the return, the revenge game in Buffalo. He didn't call it that. I'm calling it that. But he did say that it would be a great story and that he's really excited and looking forward to that game. And just this season in general, they asked him about the contract situation and how he feels going into a contract year and potentially not being on the team next year.
Do you allow yourself to think about your contract? Do you envision hitting free agency next year?
I talked to you about God. You got to trust God, and for me, it's not looking too far ahead. It's living in the moment, being present, and I'm thankful to be here this year, to be able to compete for this organization, compete for this city. It means so much to me, and I just want people to know that, man. It really means everything to me, so I'm excited about it.
I feel like this question got Mark thinking a little bit, and it almost got a little awkward in a way, and I could tell that Mark is definitely thinking about that. Not that it's going to be a distraction or anything, but there's no way to not think about it. You got Isaiah Likely, who the entire fan base is screaming to pay and be the number 1 tight end. And you've been the Ravens tight end your entire career, 8 years now, and the best Ravens tight end ever. I think we can say that at this point. I mean, you could argue a Todd Heap or a Dennis Pitta or something, but Mark Andrews is the franchise touchdown leader. He's going to go in the Ring of Honor. This is one of the all-time Ravens, and it's probably a weird feeling. I feel weird even as a fan talking about Mark not being on the team next year. I think that's probably where we're headed, and I think Mark probably knows that too, and that's why when he gets directly asked about the contracts or, is he thinking about playing here next year, does he want to retire a Raven, he won't even answer it. And Eric DeCosta got kind of awkward in the offseason too when they were talking about Mark Andrews and being here for a long time. It just doesn't seem like anybody's ready to commit or even say anything like that, which kind of tells you that he probably won't be here. And it makes sense. You can't pay Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews both top tight end contracts. I mean, we have too many other guys to pay. You're not going to shell out 2 major tight end deals. So I do think they'll probably pick Likely, but either way, Mark Andrews is on this team, and I'll be excited to see him in a Ravens uniform this year. If it is a farewell year or farewell tour, I hope he has the greatest year he's ever had in a Ravens uniform. Ronnie Stanley talked about working out with Daniel Faalele in the offseason. He talked about how much attention he's putting on his body, how hard he's working this offseason, and expects a big year out of him.
Daniel's taken, a really tough approach on himself this offseason. He's been working his butt off every day. He's been pushing himself, and I've been very proud of how far he's gone.
I'm rooting for Faalele. I know I was hard on him last year, but that was just critique, man. If I see somebody not playing consistently well, then that's what we're going to talk about. It's not hate. It's nothing like that. So I'm rooting for him, man. He's going to be our right guard, most likely, like 99% chance. So I'm rooting for him to be the best right guard in the league. Why not? I hope we have the best offensive line possible. So I definitely love hearing that he's, taking this offseason as serious as possible. He's also in a contract year, so he's got a lot to prove. He's trying to earn that second contract, and I'm sure he's trying to get a decent-sized one. So, I'm expecting Faalele to have his best year, and last year was his first year starting anyway, so there's no way he doesn't take a leap. I definitely expect him to take a leap, and he's one of the guys, along with Voorhees, that I'll be watching very closely, especially when the pads come on in training camp. I want to see how the guard's looking. Is there any competition at all? I really don't think there's probably going to be a strong competition. I definitely think it is Voorhees and Faalele's jobs to lose. Maybe Ben Cleveland pushes Voorhees a little bit at the left guard spot, but I definitely think it's those guys' jobs to lose. And I really don't see how either of them or the offensive line as a whole should regress from last year. I'm expecting a leap, and I think this offensive line will definitely be better than it was last year. Another position group battle that I am locked in training camp this year is going to be the cornerback battle. Now, not the top end. Obviously we got Nate Wiggins, Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey, and I think TJ Tampa is definitely going to make the roster as well, but I am excited to see him and his development. But I really want to see who ends up being that last corner or two that makes the roster, who ends up really standing out. Is it one of the 6th-round picks in Kone or Longerbeam? We haven't heard a ton about those guys throughout minicamp and rookie minicamp. Do one of those or both of those guys really step up? Does Jalen Armour-Davis have a great camp? And, we've been seeing that he was getting moved to safety a little bit. And I think that maybe his versatility can get him a roster spot, but I also think that if he doesn't have a healthy offseason or doesn't have a great camp, that he's definitely on the chopping block. So I really think that's an interesting battle to see who's going to end up filling out that cornerback room. And I also got my eyes on the young safeties in Sanusi Kane, Bo Braid. Obviously watching Malachi Starks, I'm super excited to see him too, but I really think that Sanusi Kane and Bo Braid are the question marks, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in an unknown way. Are they going to step up, and maybe we just don't need to ever bring in a veteran at all at that position, and those are the guys, and they take a leap from last year. Been hearing some great things about Sanusi Kane throughout the offseason, so definitely watching that position group and seeing who is standing out, who's consistently making plays, because if the young guys aren't stepping up or just don't seem ready to fill in, especially that our Darius Washington third safety role, then we might have to go get a veteran. So I think that's a very interesting position battle. Also really interested to see which depth receivers make a lot of plays throughout camp and really jump out of the pack. Obviously we know Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins is at the top. I know they're going to be heavily involved. They're going to be running with the ones a lot. But who really steps up out of Tez Walker, Tylan Wallace, LaJohntay Wester, Dayton Wade, Anthony Miller? Tez Walker's been making a lot of plays throughout minicamp. I would say that he's probably got a lead in terms of, that next fourth receiver in playing time. I think Tylan Wallace is obviously always a consistent, reliable option as well, but I think Tez Walker has taken a leap from last year. It's still too early probably to say that definitively. We got to see how camp plays out and the preseason, but throughout minicamp, Tez Walker was making a lot of plays, so excited to see him throughout camp. Does he get some time with the ones? Is he making more and more plays and really earning the coach's trust to get a lot more playing time out there and actually be involved in the offense consistently? Definitely watching that. Watching LaJohntay Wester's usage. I think he's going to be our starting punt returner. I'm also excited to see that in the preseason. Hopefully he takes one to the house or something. That would be insanely exciting. But outside of special teams, is LaJohntay Wester going to be involved in the offense at all? Can a guy like Dayton Wade or Anthony Miller end up making enough plays throughout the offseason to make the active roster? These are definitely things that I'm glued in on. Really interested when the pads come on to be looking at our pass rush room, our outside linebackers. Obviously, we know what we got with Van Noy and Odafe Owe. I am excited for Owe to see that weight gain, though, and see what difference that makes. I do think we could see a better Odafe Owe in a contract year, but I also trust that he's going to be a reliable starter out there for us. I don't think that he's going to regress. So we kind of know what we got with Owe, Van Noy. Tavius Robinson could take a leap, but really excited to see those depth guys too. Does David Ojabo take a leap and make any plays throughout this offseason to make the roster, or is he on his way out? We just don't know. A lot of fans think he's going to get cut. I'm not personally there yet, but entire training camp and preseason of David Ojabo not getting a lot of time or not flashing much, then I believe that it could go that way for sure, and we could always bring in a veteran too, like a Clowney or a Judon that we've been talking about. But I'm interested to see these young guys. Adisa Isaac, how does he look? We haven't seen much of him. How does Mike Green look when those pads come on? I'm insanely excited to see that, but I definitely know he's going to make the team, and I definitely know he's going to have some type of role regardless. So I think the question marks are more on the Adisa Isaac, David Ojabo guys, but very, very excited to see Mike Green out there, especially when the pads come on. Also interested to see how this inside linebacker battle plays out next to Roquan. Is it going to be Trenton Simpson? I would lean towards it being Trenton Simpson for sure, but not writing Teddye Buchanan off. We haven't seen a ton of the rookies in general, so very excited to see that battle. Is Teddye Buchanan getting some run with Roquan? Are they in a rotation with Trenton Simpson, or is it mainly Trenton Simpson and Teddye Buchanan's running with the 2s or 3s in special teams? Is he making any plays? Definitely watching that inside linebacker battle. What's Jake Hummel's involvement in that situation too? Is he just a special teams ace? Are they working him in to the linebacker rotation? I think we definitely need to make sure that we have a consistent option next to Roquan, because we saw early last year how many things could go wrong, and it makes Roquan's play worse too when you don't have a guy next to you that you can trust to, find the right gap and play your assignment well. So I definitely think Trenton Simpson should be a lot better from those growing pains, and he has all the athleticism in the world to go out there and be a dominant linebacker. Just want to see it come to fruition this offseason. In the last position group I'm glued in on, that could be one of the most important position battles out of the entire training camp, and that is who's going to be the kicker. I think it's going to be Tyler Loop. I know we drafted him, but he's in a true competition with John Hoyland, and it's not like Loop hasn't struggled. Loop had some rough days. Hoyland had some rough days. They both have had good days too. So what's training camp going to look like? We'll have a much bigger sample size. Mini camp's very short. Ravens rookie mini camp short. You don't get a lot of sample size. So yes, Tyler Loop has had some struggles, but he's a 6th-round rookie coming into the NFL. I'm not going to write him off because he missed a couple early field goals in minicamp. I definitely want to see the entirety of training camp, get to see him out there in the preseason kicking, both of these guys kicking. I'm not writing Hoyland off either. He could win the job. So I think that's a very interesting battle. It is the most unknown position group. There is no one that knows how good our kicking is going to be this year, how consistent our kicking is going to be this year. Nobody has any idea. So that is going to be high-level entertainment. Do we need to go sign a veteran? Is there even a veteran out there that would be consistent? You know, there's so many question marks. I think they're going to try and just coach Tyler Loop to be the guy. And I'm just hoping that he can be consistent, because we saw last year, even with Tucker, when he was struggling, you know, for half the season, he probably lost 4 or 5 games just because we were missing a field goal or two in those games. And there was close games where we need to make those field goals. So kicking can kind of kill you, you know, and if the Ravens don't have a consistent kicking option this year, I just expect them to be going for it a lot on 4th and short. You know, if it's 4th and 2 or 3 or less, the Ravens are probably going for it almost at all times. But if we can trust Tyler Loop and have a reliable kicking option, then maybe not. But I definitely think that is a big question mark up in the air heading into training camp. But that's it for today, guys. Actual training camp practice starts tomorrow. I believe practice is at 2:15 in the afternoon. So I'll be here after practice, after everyone talks to the media. I'll have a video tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, recapping practice, and we'll do that every day throughout training camp. So I'm here covering every training camp practice. I can't wait. Just wanted to come on here, talk about who I'm excited to watch, talk about a little bit of the stuff that happened today, and appreciate you guys. Let me know what you're thinking about everything. Have a beautiful rest of your night, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens flock. The flock rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. The flock rundown. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.